Legends Live, 3 p.m. podcast.
3 p.m. I screw it up every week. I know I do. I apologize. It's just, it's the cool thing about being independent is I could do any radio hit for any company I want to, but I got to work around their schedule. So somebody wanted me at 12 today, and somebody wanted me at 11, and somebody wanted me at 1, and I'm like, listen, Legends Live is great, but I got to get out there to these different markets. So we try to do noon on Mondays, but I'm the one who screws it up every time.
Absolutely. You definitely are. No. Yeah, and before we jump in some cool things today, I saw a quarterback from Canada, Montreal area, about 6'3", about I would say he's probably about 180, 190 pounds. I can't remember the class. I thought he was like a 2023, but just had a hose for an arm. Was incredibly accurate, and it was more of a QB receiver camp setting. It wasn't. I mean, we did do competitions, but it wasn't like our traditional showcase type thing. But I was just so impressed with him, and thought about the promos that we've been doing, just nailing. We just did Colin Skeen and another one on Carson Ronner, and Colin Skeen from Connecticut, Carson Ronner from Nebraska, guys who look really like they could be big time players in unique places, right?
Connecticut, Nebraska, nobody recruits those areas unless you're a big name. The funny part about Skeen's film is, and I like this, the first throw is his best throw. I mean, it's just a laser beam. And then he goes into the downfield touch. And it's an interesting approach because sometimes you see the downfield touch first, sometimes you see a string of outs and stuff like that. And then Rouner's just running around, just, no blocking whatsoever and on the move and all this other stuff. And, they're both legitimate to me, FBS, and I'm not talking Alabama, but I mean, come on, there's FBS programs out there that are looking for quarterbacks, whether they're from the MAC or the Sun Belt, or even if you're talking about a lower area Power 5 school. And with the portal, you're going to lose some quarterbacks. I was thinking about this, is like how easily now with unlimited transfers, kids are going to be able to go in there. And I was looking through all the transfer classes, and almost every class is a quarterback. It's crazy. You look at Colorado's class, and off the top of my head, I'm not sure if they have one, but from every Power 5 school as a quarterback. So, for these guys, to get the exposure through the program, again, it's going to put them on the radar, not only for a scholarship, but if it's, let's say it's too late for the 2023 kid from Canada. Let's say he's a 2023. You get on the radar, and you're going to be that guy that they keep in mind for the portal if you show some signs, at the FCS level.
Absolutely, and I think these unique places where guys are from that don't get heavily recruited for whatever reason. Obviously, a lot of times has to do with geographical location of players, meaning are there a lot of players there? So what does a college coach want to do? They want to hit it as many schools that have players in as short an area as possible, right? So people are always like, why is Miami-Dade such a hotbed area? Why in New Jersey is Bergen County hit way harder than everywhere else? Bergen County, Hudson County, because they just go right up and down those highways and just hit schools. And it's the same thing in these areas would have shown that have a lot of players. So that's how some of those guys get looked at. So if you go to Miami-Dade, what is it, Central? What's the one that's the powerhouse in Miami? Well, there's
it varies, but yeah, Miami Central is obviously a great program. Down there, there's so many that just have a great tradition of talent that it doesn't even matter if they're good.
Right.
There's going to be football players there, and then you go north into Orlando and then Dr. Phillips, and then you go over to Tallahassee and Lincoln, you go over to Tampa. And it's just endless down there. But who's the starting quarterback for the Miami Hurricanes? Tyler Van Dyke. Where's he from? New Hampshire. I think, if I remember correctly, he's from New Hampshire.
Yep.
They will find you anywhere. They will find you anywhere. And maybe I'm wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure this is the thing about covering 2,000 kids a year is you forget stuff. But I'm pretty sure Tyler Van Dyke. And then I can't remember his name, the short kid who's battling Notre Dame, for the Notre Dame starting job with Buckner. He's from Connecticut, and he got on the radar very, very early. And that's what needs to happen if you're in those states. Now, when you're talking about non-quarterbacks, you need it even more. Quarterbacks, everybody kind of watches and says, "Oh, who's this Carson Browner kid from Nebraska?" and keep an eye on him. Position kids are a dime a dozen everywhere. So if you're a wide receiver, a one-stop shop. You'll go to like one county, and you could end up getting two of your wide receivers in a class there. So you have to differentiate yourself, and that's what's funny about this is that the portal itself, the most valued players are offensive and defensive linemen. When a kid goes in the portal from offensive, they're all looking for big bodies who can move. And the thing they're looking the least for is wide receivers, which is kind of weird because you think of Jordan Addison and some of the other big names that have moved around. And that's one of the things. If you're a skilled position kid from an area that's not heavily recruited, you need this help. You definitely just do to get yourself out there. Because they'll find quarterbacks in New Hampshire and Connecticut and Nebraska, and we'll certainly help them find them. They're not going to find a wide receiver in Nebraska ever, unless you get the help.
Right. Well, that's a really good point. And Tyler Van Dyke's from Connecticut, Glastonbury, Connecticut.
I think he's originally from New Hampshire, though.
Oh, really? Oh, so Suffield. So his Suffield Academy must be from
right, and that's where Christian Wilkins went, and he's originally from Massachusetts. So Suffield Academy is sort of like a feeder ground for top New England kids. But maybe he's from Glastonbury. I don't know. Tyler Van Dyke in my head is New Hampshire, but he's from New England at the very least. And it's funny because I remember Christian Wilkins, the defensive tackle who ended up being a first rounder out of Clemson. He's with the Miami Dolphins now. He was in Massachusetts, and his coach sent me his film as a freshman, and he was just really, really good, but nobody knew who he was. He wasn't at Suffield yet. And I invited him to a camp that we were running in New Jersey, and he drove all the way there, and he was pretty good there, and he had no offers, and he ended up with 40-plus offers. I'm not saying he wouldn't have had to make that drive, but I could have, with this program, I could have blown that kid up so early, so fast. Now, he ended up going to where he wanted to. It was down to Clemson and BC. He either wanted to stay local or go win a national championship. But those type of kids that have to go, and you're in New Jersey, I mean, all those type of kids that go to preps, the Steele DeVitos. Remember Steele DeVito?
Yeah, of course.
Kid? There's two kids at Loomis here in Windsor. I'm physically currently located in Windsor, Connecticut. There's two kids, one going to Alabama, like from Loomis.
Loomis has a bunch of kids. So Loomis has the defense. You may be talking about the defensive end.
I'm talking about the offensive lineman who just committed to, I think it was Alabama. But they have the defensive end too. And it's like, what the hell? Loomis Chaffee, like when I was playing 100 years ago, it was like I don't know what they did over at Loomis. I thought they did like sort of trade shop stuff, like fix engines and, become a mechanic or an HVAC guy. Now I'm looking and I just can't believe I live in Windsor and there's two, legitimate borderline top 100 kids in the country that go there. Now, neither of them are from Windsor, but they're transplants and they got the exposure there.
Defensive end the defensive end and his brother, they came to a lineman camp during COVID at my in New Jersey. They came all the way from Kentucky. They're from Kentucky. Came all the way to New Jersey. Came to that camp. The one brother didn't participate. I think he was younger. The older one, which was a sophomore, I want to say at the time, or he was just hands above everybody. And actually, a bunch of those kids that were in that camp went like FCS and stuff. So he was hands above all those guys. And this is a good example of it. Okay. This is before we had the program. I did a TikTok video on him. or he may have even bought a TikTok video. I can't remember. I did a TikTok video on him. It literally went viral. I mean, like 100,000 plus, and within 30, and he would tell you this, within 30 days he had his first offer. Okay, and then as everything started getting out, his film and all this stuff, he had excellent film, and his brother obviously is a fantastic player too, so they're kind of like a little package deal. And next thing you know, this kid had, I mean, he must have like 20 plus offers now. But he went to that camp literally because me and his father had gone back and forth on Twitter, and they were trying to figure out, like, he was a very good player, but they wanted to go get more. Came out there, we ended up doing the video on him and all these different things, and then he started picking up offers, and then it starts to scale, right? When people film, they're like, wow, this guy really is a player, right?
Yep.
And
the other kids from Europe.
Yep.
So Bjorn Warner, I don't know if you remember that name, but he came over and played at Suffield Academy as well.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
maybe it might have been Salisbury Prep here in Connecticut from Germany, and ended up going off to Florida State and ended up being a first rounder for the Colts. He didn't pan out in the NFL, but still made his money. But I can tell you this, if Loomis has those two kids, there's probably 5 other kids on that team that are FCS level, as you mentioned, that need the exposure. And they'll get a little bit of a boost from these two because colleges will actually come through Loomis.
Yep.
But that's rare. I mean, it's probably the first time in 25 years since I've been doing this that anybody's really, really, really come through Loomis. Like, and by really, I mean the Alabamas, Georgias of the world. It's like there's always the kid that is recruited by UConn or Syracuse or BC or somebody at Loomis, but not this. But without that boost, you need some sort of promotion. I saw you did the Connecticut quarterback too, pre. Because I retweeted that the other day, and it's the TikTok stuff reaches a different audience than the Instagram stuff does, than the Twitter stuff does,
Yep.
and it's extremely interesting. And the Marshall kid from Pennsylvania got at least 2 coaches following him now. He's excited about it because no one would know. It's like if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, it doesn't make a noise. That's how recruiting can be. So it's kind of neat to hear those stories too. And we got a couple of new ones coming out that I'm excited about. One from Virginia Beach area who's a stud. That he's gonna blow up. It's gonna be fun to watch him because that's going to be a 30-40 offer kid just like Christian Wilkins. And then we can beat our chests and brag and say we got him all those offers, which we didn't, but we could lie.
Well, we'll have a big part of, like, just that promo part of it, and I'm excited about that. He's my next one, I think.
Me too. Yep, me too. Yep.
So I have some ones from my camps and stuff that are like the TikTok things, but he's my next one of our RD1 promo programs. And yeah, I mean, he's a stud. We
got to get that Canadian quarterback though. I want.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Yeah,
Christian Valou. He's a Montreal area kid who's at Penn State, and there's been a lot of Canadian kids over the last many years that have had to come down into Michigan and play, or go to New England prep schools and play. But I really think in this virtual age, they don't need to do that anymore. And it's they just need to find a home in the United States, whether it's FCS or not, and then build their career from there. If it's too late, if he's a 2023 and everybody's already filled their, find him an FCS home and let him do his thing.
Yeah, I gotta pull up his stuff because he really was.
Are you giving out free advertising? Are you giving him free clips?
No, I'm not. I'm just
like I see you are. I see what you're doing. You're trying to pull it up now.
I was curious to see what the huddle film, because I hadn't checked it yet. And interesting.
He's gonna be
He's listed.
Artsy.
He's listed height wise what I thought he was. So I didn't. We don't. It's a camp, so we measure it. We don't measure it. I'm saying I didn't measure him. So I was just kind of. But I
You
was
could
like,
eyeball though. I mean, that's a good segue into the quarterback you want to talk about. He's
yep.
not that tall. You can eyeball. I mean, listen, we've been doing this for long enough where I could just look at a kid and be like, okay, 6'5".
He's bigger than me. So I'm like, he's taller than me. I'm 6'1". If he's definitely taller than me, I'm like, okay, he's probably either 6'2", 6'3". Maybe if he's way taller than me, he's probably 6'4".
I was golfing last week and I ran into a dude in my league who did TV stuff. He was in the local cable here and he did ESPN stuff and all this other, and he's asking me what I do. And I said, yeah, I do some sports stuff, and Scott a little bit. And we were talking about that. And I gave my famous Derrick Henry story because he brought up Derrick Henry, led him to the fantasy football title a couple years ago. And then he got hurt last year. So here's my eyeball story is if they're taller than me, they shouldn't be running backs because I'm 6'1". So I was at a camp 100 years ago and there's this kid who's 6'4" and he's 240 pounds. He's sitting in the running back line. And me as a good Samaritan, I go up to him and I said, son, he was a freshman. I go, you're in the wrong line. He goes, sir? I said, no, the defensive ends are over there. And he's like, no, I'm a running back, sir. And I said, no, you're not. And that was Derrick Henry. He stayed in the running back line, and things kind of turned out pretty well for him. But he was 6'4", and I'm like, you're not a running back, kid. You're an end. It happens.
Yep, he worked out pretty good. All-time high school leading rusher, and
he didn't listen to me, thankfully. Imagine if you switched lines and said, "Oh, this guy, this pasty fat guy from Connecticut who's well known thinks I'm a defensive end. Let me give up running back." It's like the butterfly effect. I could have changed the history of Alabama football, the NFL. So thankfully, Derrick Henry just said, "I'm a running back, sir," and I said, "Okay, whatever." I rolled my eyes too. I was like, "Whatever."
Well, here's my funny Derrick Henry story. So he came to our camp as an 8th grader. Yulee hosted it. That's how much they wanted to get him on the map. Yulee was like, "We have a kid, that's going to be a guy, and we want to host a camp." I was like, "All right," like we never had a camp at Yulee, and so we hosted it. Like I think 2 years we hosted at Yulee. And he first came as an 8th grader, and then he came as a 9th grader. But 9th grade, he wasn't even. By then, he was already, as a 9th grader, was already a starter for them and stuff. But so what was funny is this. So I see him. Then he was the high school player of the year. I was at the Maxwell Awards in New Jersey. They're like award ceremony, and they have. I don't know if you know that Harrah's there. I don't know if you've ever been there, but this is when the Harrah's was still pretty nice. Now the other ones are more of the place to go. But the Harrah's has like a pool party thing, like a nightclub scene thing. So they had like, people were going in and out of there. And I go in there and I'm just walking around, strolling around it and seeing what's going on. And I turn and I'm standing next to Derrick Henry. I said, "Derrick, how did you get in here?" And then you look at him, and he was so big.
Right, he looks like he's 25.
He looked like he was 25 at the time. And I'm like, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to go walk around, can you just watch my phone for me? So literally my job was to watch his phone. He was plugged into the charger. He went into the, I guess there to charge his phone. And so he charged his phone. He walked around for a second, came back like 5-10 minutes later, grabbed his phone and then he left. But my job was to hold and watch Derrick Henry's phone.
And I will tell you this, he was at that time, because I know the same time I spent a weekend with him for the Player of the Year tour for the Army All-American Bowl. He was not a club guy. He was not a city guy.
Nope.
So he came up and we had this promotional tour, and they were nice enough, because I was on the selection committee at the time, to let me, hang out with the kids and sort of interview them and follow their process through this. They got to meet. It was Johnny Manziel's Heisman year. They got to meet Johnny Manziel. They got to go to the Heisman dinner. They were all super shy. I got to introduce Derek to Tony Dorsett and some of the other legends that he had heard of but was too young to know about. So two things happened to poor Derek within 10 minutes of each other, maybe 15 minutes. So we were going, I think it was post Katrina. So we were going down to help put together care packages for people who didn't have electricity, bottled water, all this stuff. It was part of our outreach program, and the kids worked really hard. So I'm with Derek and we get off the subway, which he was scared to death of originally. And then we get off and we're walking down, I forget where it was. And there's this poultry butcher across the street, right? And we're walking. And this guy, this is what they do at poultry butchers. They have all the chickens lined up and they're all hung by their feet. And what they do is they slit their throats across like 12 of them at a time. And it's the worst thing you're ever going to see or hear. And this guy just did it right out in the open. He wasn't in his like butcher room. So I'm walking with Derek Henry and this guy's slitting chicken throats. And Derek's like, I don't like it here. I'm scared. And I said, he's 6'4", 240 pounds, bigger, stronger than me. And I'm like, it's going to be okay. We have to leave early. We go back on the subway because he had to do an interview. 10 minutes into the interview, we find out that someone got shot and killed at the same subway stop we were at. 10 minutes after we were there. And Derek's like, I don't like New York City. I want to leave. And I get it. It's like there was just the biggest nightmare for that kid. And now look at him. He's well known. He's sort of, he's a worldly guy. But back then he was such a bumpkin that he didn't even understand any of these things that happened. And he got to see, unfortunately, chicken genocide and New York City murder within 10 minutes of each other. And I felt so bad. I'm like, dude, this isn't me. I didn't do this. But he was really, he didn't want to stay. He wanted to leave.
No, that makes sense. And where Yulee is, it's in between Jacksonville and Georgia, right? So the border of Georgia. So it's like it really is not. It's not in a heavily populated area, and it's a small school. So his school, right? It was like, what was that? It was like considered like in Florida. I guess it would be like a 2, maybe.
Maybe 3.
Maybe 3.
2 or 3. But he still, he broke Emmitt Smith's record for most rushing yards in high school, and I think that's been broken since. But just a legendary guy, and a lot of people talked about how some schools, Will Muschamp wanted him as a linebacker. That's one of the reasons. And he originally committed to Georgia. Georgia fans know that, but a lot of people might not know that. In the history of college football, actually, we're coming out with an article on my site about it. What if Derek Henry stuck with Georgia and how that would change? Because we just did one on Johnny Football. And what if he stuck with Oregon? Because he and Marcus Mariota were committed to Oregon in the same class. And the funny part about this butterfly effect thing is if Johnny Manziel stays at Oregon, Mike Evans might not become the star that Mike Evans becomes. He might not end up being a first rounder. He might not be set the rookie record for most 1,000-yard seasons, not rookie record, but to start your career. He might not be one of the guys that helps lure Tom Brady to Tampa Bay, and Tom Brady might not be with the Buccaneers and win a Super Bowl had Johnny Manziel stuck with Oregon. It's just weird to go that far down the line and see. And if Derek Henry stayed at Georgia, Nick Chubb might have ended up in Alabama. It's just so many different things that could have happened back then, and it's just fun to look back and watch. But I don't know how we got into Derek Henry stories. Oh, height. So, yeah, we just see, you're 6'4", you don't belong as a running back. Well, he kind of proved us wrong. And remember, you're 5'11", Russell Wilson. You don't belong as a quarterback. And he kind of proved us wrong, too. So let's get to our quarterback that we want to talk about here, who's not tall.
Jaden Davis. So it's interesting because obviously he's one of the top 5 quarterbacks, I guess. And some people think he's the best in that class. And,
I have him as a 4, not a 5.
A 4,
not the best, but he's a top 6 quarterback in the class. Yes.
And I remember doing a video on him a couple years ago, and he was far ahead of other kids at his age at that time. I mean, he just did amazing things. But what I saw was interesting was the video that I can't remember who posted it. You commented on it.
I think it's QB Plug
QB,
did it
yeah, maybe it was QB Plug.
on
Yeah,
TikTok.
and the hose for an arm is obviously apparent, and the accuracy in a lot of things he does is obviously apparent. But I always wonder, when you see certain things mechanically, does that create a pause? Even though the guy's got a cannon, he seems to be super accurate. And the one thing I noticed was how he's so low, and it becomes a big, huge windmill action, even though he happens to do it very fast, which is, you pointed that out. But I always worry about that hand comes off, defensive end comes around rushing, slaps that arm down. Does the ball, is he prone to possibly fumble more because of that huge windmill action? Because most guys who are the top quarterbacks, they hold it up here, right? And then, but he's almost towards the stomach when he releases. And like I wonder, and this is something, I'm asking as you've evaluated probably more quarterbacks than anybody. Do coaches worry about that when they start to see that as they get older, even though he's a kid that has a million offers from the get-go, right? He's going to Michigan, I think, right now, or is committed to Michigan.
He's not committed, but he's likely to go to Michigan.
Leans there. And does that become a source of concern? And is that fixable? And I'm going to bring this person up because I thought no one should have tried to mess with him and just let him be who he was. He was that exceptional as a player, and I would have loved to see it play out. But Tim Tebow, had kind of almost a similar thing. You know what I'm saying? Tim Tebow had almost a similar thing, but somehow Tim Tebow was, obviously, you could argue, the greatest college football player of all time, right? I mean, he's in the argument for it.
You can argue that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's in the conversation. And then you go on to the NFL, and all they tried to do was mess with his throwing motion. And I always say Tim Tebow got a raw deal, probably a lot of times because there was all this backlash against him being religious and stuff. And obviously he has a ton of fans because of that, but also because a ton of backlash. And I think the NFL moved him out of the system unfairly for that reason, because he did win ball games, even though it was unconventional in his style relative to most of NFL quarterbacks. But, you see later, right? Lamar Jackson most of his throws are on the run. He does all kinds of amazing unconventional things and wins ball games.
Well, Mahomes is off platform like crazy. Kyler Murray has to be off platform because he's so short, and Russell Wilson, and the mechanics aren't as important nowadays. I do worry a little bit about dropping your arm and the windup, but I'll tell you this: Bryce Young had a similar windup, and so what they'll do is they'll fix that. They'll shore that up. When he gets to college, that's the first thing they'll work on, because you don't want it. His ball comes out quick, but it could come out quicker.
Right.
And as you mentioned, as a shorter quarterback, or not the 6'5" guy, you don't want any sort of 85-degree or sidearm anything. You don't want that type of angle on your throw unless you're, outside the pocket, because you will get passes batted down and tipped up in the air. And so that's the first thing. The first thing I look for when I look at a quarterback is the weakness. First thing, because none of them are perfect. This perfect recruit rating that's out there, it's dumb, because there's nobody that's perfect. The closest prospect ever to being perfect for me was Jadeveon Clowney, and he wasn't perfect. But as a quarterback, that's the first thing I look for is that, okay, what were the flaws that need to be worked on for this guy? But you can't tweak him too much, as you mentioned, because Tyler Buchner changed his entire throwing style for some reason. You got a new coach, a quarterback coach or somebody, and he just looked awful. And this was the COVID Elite 11 year. And then they finally got him, to Notre Dame and fixed that. And he's just back to where he was. But for some reason, someone got in his head and said, you need to fix this. And his mechanics became worse, and he just looked unnatural. So I say you let them be who they are, but you try to shore it up a little bit. You don't want that. You don't want the hand dropping and the arm dropping like that. But that was one of my criticisms of Bryce Young when he was the number two player in the country. Uh, and his dad didn't like that criticism, and he's obviously won a Heisman, and you know, but it was fixed. It was adjusted and tweaked, and it didn't change anything else for him.
Right. And I think that's the interesting. I love how you're able to see that and project that and have an understanding of the difference between something that's a small tweak for what like we're talking about versus someone who has a true mechanical flaw. Like I'm trying to think of guys, but like there are guys that have
Well, Philip Rivers has an absolute disgusting release. Horrible. I would have tried to change him, and he's going to go in the Hall of Fame.
right.
It's awful, but sometimes it works. But when you see a kid like that, you want to change him. And then I guarantee you, people at NC State tried to change him. I guarantee the NFL tried to change him, and every time it just wouldn't be comfortable for him, didn't work, and he kept winning and putting up numbers, and they finally just said, screw it. I don't care how ugly it looks, just keep doing what you're doing. But he's an example of a kid with just an awful mechanical flaw, and it didn't hinder him whatsoever. And then you get the kids. Back in the Jimmy Clausen days, the ball was by the ear, and that's no longer anything you want. Um, it restricts. Honestly, it restricts your mechanics a little bit if you're trying to get the ball too high and you're trying to get it out. Like you need to have that ability to have a fluid motion. So when Jimmy Clausen came out, the ball was by his ear and everybody said it was perfect mechanics. That's exactly how you should do it. And now it's like perfect mechanics are what works for you, but we're going to point them out. I mean, Davis isn't perfect.
Right.
He's gotta get rid of that windup a little bit, just like Bryce Young did, and he will, and he'll be very good. And Jim Harbaugh knows more about quarterbacks than I'll ever even think about knowing.
Right.
And I know he knows it and sees it, and he'll fix it.
That's so interesting. Yeah, the quarterback position. I think what you're saying is so important. Unless the guy's like true sidearm or something like that, that has to be you're gonna have a problem. But it's these players start throwing a football or a baseball or whatever they're throwing, and they throw so much that they've developed their own style of getting the ball out quick. As long as it's coming out quickly, as long as it's not some, slow winding thing, getting the ball out quickly, they develop their own style with their own body structure is. And I guess what you're saying is that like everybody's body, the quarterbacks are now coming all different shapes and sizes, whereas before they didn't. So that may also have an effect on what works for each person's body mechanics. Like Jaden Davis, he's a built quarterback. Russell Wilson's a built quarterback. So they're a little bit more muscular. So they've adapted to what their style is. Whereas the long, tall quarterback, when them coming over the top is pretty easy for them to do because they have so much arm,
Right.
and not as much width of their body, right? So
Yeah.
it's interesting.
And baseball is a good point too, because a lot of them do play baseball. And baseball, the release of a baseball is different than the release of a football. But Kyler Murray, zips the ball. He's a great baseball player, great football player, just got paid, big time money to play football. But a lot of his, Russell Wilson was a great baseball player too, if you remember, drafted. Those guys, it's okay because they've adapted to a baseball type of throw and sort of that slight. It's not a sidearm, but it's not what you want. But they're also shorter guys.
Quarter, right? You call it a 3/4.
Yeah, but it's great for them, because they've learned to find passing lanes, and they've learned to, and that's technically off platform to me. Off platform, people think is, you got to be like Matrix. You got to be sideways, throwing the ball underhand, like we see Mahomes did in the Super Bowl, that one play where he's running 30 yards backwards. No, off platform is just kind of, yes, it's off balance, but it's also getting the ball out in the way that's best, and it may not look like you're used to it looking. But if Kyler Murray were just a direct over the top release guy, I mean, he already gets passes batted down. He would get more and more passes batted down. So he had to adjust. And, like I said, with those guys, I wouldn't tweak them too much. I worry less about the 3/4 or the sidearm stuff than I do about the drop and the windup, because that will hurt you in the end, and they'll get rid of that windup real quick.
Mm. That's really interesting. And then I know you got to run. I want to hit where people can check out the promo. I have one question for you.
What's that?
I know you golf a ton. Do you play any pickleball?
No, but somebody just told me I should.
I play all the time.
So it's for us olds, right? Us old people. Um, I really want to. Now, I live in this place. It's like Melrose Place. This is why I keep turning my head, because there's so many young, attractive people here. And I'm the old dude. And in this clubhouse, and the office is kind of near the pool. So there's a lot of people walking by. And I'm like, I glance and I'm like, whoa. But they don't have a pickleball place because I'm the only old fart here. So I got to start playing pickleball. It's really good exercise. And I just did a video about how my cardiovascular conditioning can go down within 3 weeks to death levels. I can work out for 6 months to a year to just get myself to this point, and I could just spend 3 weeks eating garbage, and all of a sudden I need an iron lung. So I need to constantly do something. So pickleball, I'm very interested. Who do you play with?
So my next door neighbor now play. I've gotten at least 10 to 15 people in my area now playing, but I play with my neighbor. I'll play.
Where?
So we have where I live. It's taken off. So I'm kind of close to. I'm like 10 minutes from the beach. So pickleball, as you know, Florida, right? It was a big Florida beach kind of older people thing, and it's spread up here. So a lot of the tournaments are now at Long Beach Island, Avalon, all those kind of beach places, and it slowly has moved up towards where I'm at the beginning part of the beach area, which is a beginning part of Monmouth County, and so we have in Tinton Falls, New Jersey. There's 6 pickleball only courts. There's always a line to play, and it's free too, and you can play. There's a place that's a racket club that my son plays tennis, does tennis lessons at. And when we first started doing with him when he was young, because he'll go for like a couple of months each year, they just started pickleball. Now pickleball consumes their whole back area. So and they have a pickleball instructor, and that's how I started. They have a guy that's like a pro, and he's a pickleball instructor. And I started just like, I'm gonna go take some lessons. Started taking some lessons, and I started learning. And I was just like, yeah, this is what I need to do.
I need to find. They used to have it at my gym because my gym is kind of like for older people.
Right.
So pickleball, this was like pre-COVID. They were playing pickleball, and I didn't know what it was. But now it's the rage. It's like a friend of mine just last week was asked to play pickleball, and she's like, I'm not playing. Not gonna play. And then she played, and she's like, it's the greatest thing I've ever done in my life. I love it. You got to play.
You will feel the same way. First of all, you'll pick it up. This was the thing that I didn't realize. You'll pick up the basics in 10 minutes. So you could go and play with someone who's significantly better than you, but because you got the basics in the first 10 minutes, I mean, they might beat you, in doubles, but doubles is so much fun. You're playing with another person, and that ball starts rocking it back and forth. I've been paired up with a 75-year-old woman who couldn't move, but could whack the ball. And we beat like some younger people. And I was like, if you put a drop shot or something, she wasn't getting to it. But you put that ball anywhere around her, she was smacking it. She was smacking it.
And you don't have to run a
No.
lot. I've seen it. I've watched it. I've never played it, but it's for those of us who can no longer play tennis. I used to play tennis when I was younger, way younger. and I can't play tennis now. I would die. But pickleball, I could play.
Yep, and it's you're shocked at how much you sweat because you're still moving a lot. It's just
Hmm.
that you're not covering an excessive amount of ground. You're covering a couple yards here, a couple yards there, back and forth. But instead of tennis, you're covering 10 yards, almost 10 yards in some instances, right? So here you're covering 2, 3 yards at a clip, but you're doing it over and over and over again. So over the course of playing multiple games, you're dripping sweat because
Yep.
you've covered so much ground, but you haven't had to move that far, which is great because it doesn't crush your joints the way that, like, if you're chasing down a tennis ball full speed, I
Yeah.
mean, forget at our age
Yeah.
it
And
starts.
and the change of direction in tennis is a lot more violent
Oh,
and stuff. So they're building something back here. They're knocking down some trees, and I'm hoping it's going to be like a basketball court and a pickleball court, but it's probably more apartments so they can, charge an exorbitant amount of rent. Uh, but I gotta do it. I have to do something because I walk, and where I used to live, there were a lot of hills and stuff, and I walk golf. And now, you get out of shape for 3 weeks and you're up the hill, you're like, oh, you're dying. So you need that heart rate boost. So I'm definitely looking for, now again, there's nobody on here who's going to watch this and live near me to play pickleball. But if there happens to be, I would go. The closest one is in South Windsor, Connecticut. It's about 10, 15 minutes away from me. I'm not a big stranger guy though. Like I don't like
yeah,
showing up and just
that
saying,
was hard
hey.
for me at first.
Yeah,
I just showed up. No one wanted to play with me, and when I first
right.
started, I wasn't that good. But now I show up at the same place, and they're always wondering, like, how come I only play for I play for like an hour, but then I got to go do something. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people are retired; they're there all day. So,
Pickleball all day.
oh, they're pickleball all day. I mean, listen, I envy them to an extent, but so I go up and play, and now there's a group of people that are like, "Oh, if this guy's on, like you do want to pair with him." So whereas for the first time, no one wanted to pair with me. Now they'll play like, "Oh yeah, yeah," because you're gonna win. You're gonna have a good chance to win a game if you're playing with me. So I mean, unless someone's a pro, it's gonna. I'm gonna be in the mix to win every single game. And but it's funny because I got friends of mine in it, like guys that went to high school with that they were looking for something, like they worked out, but they were looking for something that it wasn't just working out or walking that eventually
Yeah,
get
something
bored.
fun.
Right. They wanted some fun. So they started
Yeah.
playing, and next thing you know, like I didn't even know they were playing. I played 1 or 2 times with them, and they live about a friend of mine lives about 15, 20 minutes away. And he's like, hey, if you want to come up play Sunday, we're playing over here. This area, they have like 6 or 7 courts by him too. And I'm like, you guys play? He's like, yeah, we play once or twice a week, every week, all the time.
He's hooked.
Yeah, hooked. He's
He's
completely hooked. He texted me the other day. It was 100 degrees out. He's like, hey, we're playing now. I'm like, wait, you want me to just drive up there now? I don't live, I'm not right there. I can't make it. He's like,
well,
oh,
and this, you know this. You'll ask your friends, and they'll say, "No, that's stupid. I'm not gonna do that." And then eventually they'll do it, and then they'll fall in love with it. That's not where I'm at. I'm at the stranger portion where I don't like just dealing with people. But if I can convince one of my friends to play, I know they'd be hooked, and I would play it all the time.
what I think if you could do this, if you have one of them around you, like the racket club that I went to, I just like got in some other group with a trainer, a pickleball guy who trains like 3 people at a clip and you kind of play with him as well.
Maybe get to know them, and
I got to know them and then we came a little bit of a group. Now we don't go play together outside really, but when we go there, like we all play together, which is pretty good. But we all learned to get together. So we were random people. We didn't know anybody because the instructor was like, hey, if you know someone, I'm like, I don't know anyone that plays. Like,
mhm.
I just want to learn for myself. So he's like, all right, there were other people that asked about it. We'll put you guys all together. And that's what they did. It was, they were older guys than me, about 10 years older. And it was great because for 3 months, we basically were learning. He was teaching us as we played and we all got better and we got familiar with each other. So So it became like a good learning environment. But yeah, so now I can go off on my own. I'm confident in everything being able to play.
What I need is a few more people to sign up for the promo at myfootballcamps.com/D1 so I can afford to hire a pickleball trainer. So if you want to save my life, because I could die without pickleball,
We don't want that.
sign up for the promo, and I promise that I will take some of that money and I'll hire a pickleball trainer like you did, and then I'll get to know other people, and then I'll be a pickleball maniac. And I won't video it though. I will never ever video myself playing pickleball. I have to have some things that are private, but it sounds like a lot of fun.
I think you love it. And there is your promo for myfootballcamps.com/D1. Okay, check us out. Listen, everyone asked this question, and I have a couple other people that have asked about the promo that I think are going to sign up. And they asked this question. They go, wait, so if I do the year-long, the 6-month deal, is it one promo? How does that work? I said, well, it's one promo a month, but it's me and Mike doing a promo. So it's really 2 videos a month. We have our own different style of doing it. Mike does it from the analyst standpoint, and I do it from a little bit more from a coaching standpoint, and it's really great. And it's 2 videos a month. So essentially you're getting 12 videos that are out in this, just our marketplace, which is over 1.5 million, but the butterfly effect of it, meaning ricocheting out to everywhere else, you're reaching millions and millions of people and coaches. It's there's nothing like it.
And they're different too. Like I just hit up Carson Rauner's dad, and I said, listen, do you have any off-season workout throws, stuff like that? The offensive lineman Hartman sent me some drills that he was doing. He sent me some workouts that he was doing. I don't want to put the same thing out 6 times in a row. I want it to be different. So we're always hitting you up. If you do the 6-month thing, we're always hitting you up, say, hey, what do you got? What have you been doing? Videotape your son, doing these particular throws or lifting weights or doing splits or whatever that'll show what you want shown. And that's kind of it too. So it's not like I do one and then that one goes out the next 5 months. It's always something new and fresh, and we will ask you for more. So the more you can provide us video wise, we had one of the 2 Jersey kids that just signed up, right? His brother is older and he wanted his game film, and the younger one just got from JV. They're at the Hun School and played the last few games as varsity, and he wants his off season 7-on-7 camp workout stuff done. I'm like, great, send me as many videos as you have doing that. And then once we get into the season and you're playing varsity next year, then we'll pull clips, from your games, and it's all sorts of things. So if you do the 6-month one, and we do have the year one, even though you didn't know it was up, it's up. That's just going to be different. It's going to be different every time, and it's going to continue to hit. So I will say this: I did my 3rd Carson Rauner one, the quarterback from Nebraska. The first one I did, nobody's ever heard of him. Nobody knows at all. Second one, who's this kid? Third one, which just went out today, you could tell. You could start to see that more coaches are paying attention, more coaches are following. I'm getting a few more questions here and there, like, who is he? And that's what it takes. You have to be in the consciousness of, you can't just send a tape and hope. You got to continually be there. And that's what we're going to do with the kid from Connecticut. He just got his first one done. And then it's all about repetition. It's all about showing them something different. It's all about them becoming used to. When Carson Rauner signed up, I'd never heard of him. I don't know that name. And I used to get him and the other Carson, Kluver, confused because they're 2 Carsons. I mean, of all people in the world, we get 2 quarterbacks that are 2 Carsons at the same time. Now I know the difference between them, and I know exactly, who's looking at which one and who's this and that. And one's in 2023 and the other one's in 2024. And they've become common names to me. And if they become common names to me, you can guarantee they become common names to college coaches. Trust me.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Well, check us out, and make sure you also check out Mike on Twitter, on Instagram.
M Farrell Sports, lots
M,
of stuff going on.
M Farrell Sports. I'm at Coach Schumann, and we'll be back next Monday,
Maybe at noon, maybe not.
maybe at noon, maybe not.
I'm
Mike's
popular.
Mike's popular guy. I'm really not that cool. People don't want to talk to me. People want to talk to you. They
Well, you
don't.
know what I did today? I mean, I did a hit in Nebraska, I did a hit in Arkansas, I did a hit in Missouri. It's just like, when I do these quarterback lists, the Nebraska one was about Casey Thompson being the third rated quarterback in the Big Ten, but then it segues into USC, UCLA moving into the Big Ten and this, that, and the other. And it's like, it really good line of questioning. And then they hit me up and they say, that was awesome. We got such a great reaction for that. And then I respond to them and I say, well, my calendar's filling up pretty good. I will do a weekly hit for X amount of money. And then they disappear because nobody wants to pay anything. And then they'll come back a month later. So I get deluged by certain markets once every month. And today was those markets. But I've also got full ride radio I do every week now. And I also got, what's the other one? Bill King. I forget what it's called.
Bill
He
King, like
doesn't.
Bill King, who used to do. Not
Yeah,
Bill King who used to be on. Not
he's
20.
on Sirius.
Yes,
Yes, he was 24/7. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Bill
Is he
King. Well,
still
he used to be Rivals.
Rivals,
Radio.
right?
Yeah,
Does he do Sirius still, Bill King?
it's
I,
it's in a lot of markets. It's based out of Tennessee,
okay.
so we focus on SEC and stuff like that. But yeah, Bill King, and it's funny too because Bill, I did Rivals Radio, and I was required for my contract, this is what's great about not having a contract. I was required to do every Thursday, and I would do like a half hour, and it was rough because it was like he would take phone calls, and it would be like, oh yeah, what do you think about this kid who might think about Fresno State? And I'm like, I have no freaking idea who Fresno State's recruiting. But then the next question might be about a 5-star kid going to Alabama, and I know. So I was like always like, jittery and jumping around. And then when Shannon popped up 24/7, I was hated. I was not allowed to be on the Bill King show. I was not even asked to be on the Bill King show. I was despised, still am. Now he's over at On 3. I think he still despises me for, I don't know why. Maybe I'm a little bit mouthy. And Bill is independent now. So Bill hit me up when he saw the full ride stuff. He's like, hey, you want to do this? And none of these recruiting dudes will do this show because it is still rapid fire questions and they're all afraid. And I could dance. You asked me about Wichita, not Wichita, but let's say you're asking me about East Carolina recruiting. I can dance. I know nothing about it, but I can
Right.
dance. But you asked me about Georgia, Alabama, Texas, all the big ones and stuff like that. Plus you asked me about college football. So I'm doing those. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to lessen it so that I am doing a steady stream scheduled. But right now I'm at their mercy. It's like, oh yeah, we need you 11:50 Eastern time. And then so I bump Schumann, and then he gets pissed because I
I
can
don't think
tell.
well, I love Bill. This is interesting. So when we were partners with you guys at Rivals, this is going way back. I also bought advertising on Bill King show
For NUC, huh?
Yeah, and it was actually at the time it wouldn't work the same way now because just everything's so diluted and stuff. But back then it was very effective in a sense because there wasn't that many shows that talked. Now with YouTube you got like so many different things. Like
Yeah, that was a recruiting
correct.
centric show, which was very rare.
That's right. That's exactly right. Now you have a lot of like even guys that aren't recruiting experts. They pop up everywhere, but it was very effective. So I would get calls. We would get calls that would literally. It was the only time ever on rate that we did radio. We did a lot of different other radio stuff over the years, but there was the only radio show that we ever got a call that someone said, "I heard about it on Bill King."
The Bill King show, yeah. I get a lot of that too. I get a lot of full ride, which I do with Childers and Neuheisel every week.
Childers is great. Yeah, Childers.
Yeah, he is great. And then now that I've done full ride a few times, people are like, who have old memories, they're like, oh my God, it's great to have you back on full ride. And the last time I was on full ride was legit like 2010. it's been 12 years because that's when 24/7 cropped up in 2010. So people will remember it. They'll be like, "Oh, I love you on Full Ride," and so what I'm trying to do is get as many of those gigs as possible. I'm gonna ask, for money, of course, from some of them, and then and that way I can have a real schedule and a real life. But it sucks, man. I mean, right now it's like, I was supposed to do a podcast, a South Carolina Gamecocks podcast today, 11 o'clock. So I cleared that out, and you and I were supposed to go at noon. So I cleared that out. So then I bumped some people to noon, which I had to bump us, and then the guy cancels. And I don't know. He reaches a lot of people, but I don't know his
Yeah,
life.
right.
I don't know why he canceled. He didn't cancel. He pushed it tomorrow. He's like, "Could you do the same time tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Dude, I kind of just zhuzhed my day for you today."
Right.
So then I told him the time tomorrow, and he might pump me again. And it's just, there's too many moving parts. So I'm not a schedule guy. So every Monday at noon, Legends Live is awesome,
Yeah.
but I'm going to have to change it every once in a while. It's just,
Is Childers by himself independent now, or
he works for Sirius XM,
okay? Yeah, he always
Channel 84, and he
right.
and Rick Neuheisel have a show that's on daily. It's called Full Ride.
That's right. Okay.
And it's awesome. He used to be Rivals Radio too, way
Right.
back in the day. And I've been doing their show for about 2 years now. And it's really popular simply because we talk about stupid stuff too. Rick is this straight laced, buttoned up, proper gentleman. And then there's Childers, who's the complete degenerate like I am. So he and I will go into some topics, like, I don't know, just stupid stuff. And Rick will get very upset in his own way. Like, this is inappropriate, blah, blah, blah. And it's just hilarious. People love it because they like to see Rick uncomfortable, and they like to hear me and Childers. We call ourselves like that movie Step Brothers. That's who we are. We're two idiots, complete morons, just having fun talking about college football. So that's my favorite show to do. And it's just real loosey goosey.
Very cool stuff. Very, very, very cool.
But if I punt you, it's for a real reason. It's for a
You
good
might
reason.
have to tell Chris and Bill King that if they work something out for you, that I can then maybe do. I may do a ad for what we do. At the end of work.
Listen, I do like, it's a big reach, so we can talk
know
about
that.
it.
Yeah,
It's a big reach.
Those are because for camps it doesn't work the same anymore. It just doesn't.
No, but our thing.
But our thing would work, right?
Our thing. You know what the best part about this is? Our thing can work anywhere. I have a Facebook page with like 6,000, people who follow or like. Anybody knows anybody who knows anybody who knows a kid who needs exposure. Anybody who knows anybody, and that's what's great about it. It's like, you do a kid, like you do this kid in Connecticut, and you tell them, listen, any of your teammates, anybody anybody your father knows, you played football with the father might know somebody who played at Syracuse back in the day who's got a kid. Anybody. We have just, I'm keeping up with it really well now, but there's going to be a time where I'm going to have to hire somebody to schedule and coordinate it all, because it's going to explode.
Yes.
And right now, I think we're at 2% of what we're going to do.
And you're right about that. That's the Skeen family in Connecticut. They all, because they're all the brothers are gigantic. And they're like, they just all are. They're what you call they're good genetics there. They're all gigantic. They're all well known from when they played, and they all went various different places. But so people all know them. I just know that people know that. I remember when the uncle was with, like, everybody knew them. Everybody knew. Like, I would go to his hometown. He's from Middletown, Connecticut. I think the family's originally from. I don't know if he lived there now. But
no, the kid goes to, I believe he goes to Middletown.
Go to Middletown. Is Middletown? Yeah. It was Middletown. Yeah, so that's that's a big town in Connecticut, as you know.
It is
big town. They're known for football. Pretty used. Well, they used to be really good for football. They still are pretty good for football. They have their windows. So, and their family's just known, right? So Colin does well. other people are going to know because it's Colin Skeen, and that's just the name. First of all, it's an unusual name, right? So
Right.
you're not going to forget that name. It's just an unusual name, and
No.
they happen to all be Giants too.
Well, and the funny thing about it is Connecticut's such a small state, but I mean, honestly, the way this is set up, if we just focused on Connecticut, if that's all we did, I mean, we could be as busy as we wanted to be in Connecticut. Because I used to run camps. I used to run camps with Brent Williams, Next Gen, and Kyrie Fort's dad, Guy Fort.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we used to run camps for exposure for kids in New York, Connecticut, and New England, northern New England. So it's mostly Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New York. And they always filled, always sold out, always a ton of kids. And we found some really good football players, and they ended up going off to, maybe sometimes they went up to UConn, maybe sometimes Central. But there's just the Springfield area in Massachusetts was, to me, amazing because there were so many kids. And I'm not saying they were all good, but I didn't realize so many kids in Springfield play football, and they would all come down. So if we focused on just Connecticut or New England or Western Mass, we could be as busy as possible. And that's why I'm saying this is going to blow up, because that's just one, the scheme telling somebody else, who tells somebody else, who tells somebody else, we're going to end up being so busy that we're going to be doing, videos all day long. And that's fine. I mean, I can pay for this swanky, condo, apartment, townhouse place that I live in. And maybe I can put in a pickleball court. So, all right, I'm going to go do some more radio shows. Yeah.
It's great chat.
I'll talk to you next week. myfootballcamps.com/D1. Check us out. We'll always DM you back.
I'm going to hit you right back, after the podcast real quick. Got something to share.
Okay.
All right, bye.
All right. See ya.